Another handheld. There's another freaking handheld out there. Come on, guys. That's too much handhelds. Do we really need more? Oh wow. That's nice. That's really, really nice. Okay. I can get behind this. Let's do this thing. Hello there, I'm TechDweeb, welcome. Look, I know that you miss being a kid. You miss sitting on the carpet of your living room 4 inches away from that huge CRT TV with the fake wood paneling and built-in ashtray, eating Dunkaroos off a TV guide and playing Rad Racer on your Nintendo while your parents buried your dead dog in the backyard. You never liked that dog anyways, not as much as Rad Racer. But now you're all grown up and you have adult responsibilities like cutting out coupons, wearing shoes that have laces that need to be tied up, money stuff like investing in insurance acquisitions, you know, adult stuff, whatever adults do. But there's something missing. The child within you still yearns for the simpler days, when your world was no more complicated than Dunkaroos, Rad Racer, and a dead dog. If only there was some way to recapture some of that childhood magic. Welcome home, my child. This is the Anbernic RG405m. It's the self-proclaimed world's first CNC aluminum retro handheld. Strong shape and thin texture, apparently. But don't just take Anbernic's word for it. Take mine. It's good. I like it. And today I'm going to tell you why. This RG405m was sent to me by the fine folks over at LITNXT. They sell this. So if you want one, go and buy it from them. But to be honest, I wasn't excited to get this. I kind of begrudgingly accepted it just to have it to make a video about, but I'll tell you right now that I was not expecting to like it as much as I did. It's not perfect, but in my short time with it, I've fallen in love with it. The RG405m is a beautiful, sleek device with an all-metal shell, big 4-inch IPS touchscreen. It's tight and compact, but is still spacious and comfortable, all while maintaining a pocket-friendly, low-profile size and shape. It also has the guts to handle a lot of stuff. All the super old retro stuff like Atari or Nintendo, all the early 3D retro stuff like PS1 and Nintendo 64, but also some of the more advanced 3D retro stuff like GameCube and Wii and PS2. And it can do Android stuff too. See, lots of stuff, huh? The 405m is the latest handheld to feature the Unisoc Tiger T618 chipset. It also has some other specs. I'm not going to read them to you. You're a big boy or girl. You can read those yourself. I'll put them on the screen for you. The first thing that struck me immediately upon unboxing this thing is the premium feel. I wasn't prepared for it because I was freaking blown away at how solid this thing feels in your hands. It's dense and heavy in a good way. You know how like when you pick up a cheap phone and it feels cheap, and then you pick up an expensive flagship phone and it feels premium? That's what I'm talking about here. There's lots about this device that makes its hand feel about the best that I've ever felt on a small handheld gaming device. It's not just the solid weight. The left and right sides have this kind of curve there, so your hands cup them a little bit when you hold it. The rubber pads on the back are a natural resting place for your fingers. And the placement of the buttons is tight, but it's efficient. There's not much wasted space, and it feels both compact but spacious. The obvious comparison with this device will be the Retroid Pocket 3 Plus, because they're about the same price and they both use the same chip, so they have about the same performance. They aren't the same size and shape though. The RP3 Plus is bigger, wider, obviously, which makes the 405m the more pocket-friendly option. But it's not just the size that makes it pocketable. The joysticks are recessed so that they protrude no more than the face buds. And the fact that we have inline triggers and bumpers means that the 405m has a flush profile and will ride in your pocket without any pointy humps sticking out and digging into your leg, or the leg of the guy in the seat next to you on the subway because your leg is touching and he's all like, oh, sheesh, what's this guy's leg got so many pointy humps? What's he got, an RP3 Plus in his pocket or something? That would be embarrassing for you. The compact nature of this device means that there will be some trade-offs. We don't get stacked shoulder buttons, we get inline shoulder buttons. I've heard a few reviewers and users complain about these, but I don't mind them. I'd rather this than stacked on a sleek little pocket device like this. And then they're totally fine to use and play with. I have no issue playing games with these. The recessed thumbsticks are also a trade-off, being less comfortable compared to the big chonky full-size thumbsticks on like a controller. But these are actually amazing to use. They're Hall sensor sticks, so they have a very accurate sensitivity. The rest of the controls are great apart from one thing. I had a big problem with my face buds. Long story short, they feel great when pressing them individually. They're a rubber membrane switch that with just the right amount of firmness, they're perfect in that regard. But you see how the edges of my buds have these little lines on them, these scratches? It came out of the box like this, and I think it's because of this that I'm having a major issue with the buttons sticking. When I press a button kind of on its side, like when I'm using the A and B buttons both at once, like in Aladdin when I'm running and jumping at the same time. The buttons are hard to press unless they're being pressed straight down. I think they're kind of scratching against the side of the chassis. Not only that, but check this out. When I press hard at this angle, they can stick. They actually get stuck down on an angle. And this happens with all the face buds. Look at this. It's actually a pretty common issue, apparently. I found some discussion online about it, and even Retro Game Corps made a video about how to fix this using some silicone grease, which I'll probably do. I played a ton of games on this thing, doing testing and recording gameplay for the video, and I only noticed it in a few select games, like Aladdin here. Thanks for nothing, Aladdin. But most of the time, it's not really an issue, for whatever reason. The audio-visual experience of the 405M is good. It's a 4-inch IPS touchscreen display with a resolution of 640 by 480. At this size and resolution, you can clearly see that it doesn't have a very high pixel density, and the viewing angles aren't as good as other devices, and the colors aren't super saturated, and it doesn't get super bright, but it looks good, honestly. I don't have a huge problem with it at this price point. And the main thing that I love about the screen is that it's a 4:3 ratio, which lends itself well to playing retro games. That means that systems like NES and Super Nintendo and 3D systems like Nintendo 64 and PS1 will all be playing at their native aspect ratio. And the 640 by 480 display is the pixel perfect resolution for many systems like Neo Geo and Dreamcast, and we can get perfect integer scaling of 240p systems like Sega Genesis and TurboGrafx-16. Unlike the widescreen devices out there like the RP3+, it feels like this device was made for retro games specifically, because it was, obviously. I do have one gripe with the screen though, and nobody seems to be talking about it online. I can't believe it, because it's driving me nuts, and I just have to put this out there. This screen has some sort of sharpening applied. It's applied globally across every app on the device. It's gonna be hard to show this on the camera, but I'll try. Take a look at this. Can you see how the edge of this search bar has a sort of glow around on the inside of the bar and a sort of shadow around the outside? This is sharpening. It's not noticeable all the time, but I notice it very often, and I hate it. Like, why am I the only one who's noticed this? It's so obvious to me. It looks terrible. But ultimately, it's not the biggest deal in the world. I'm still loving the device, even with this. I just wish that I could turn that off. The operating system that we have on here is Android 12. It's basically stock Android with only one small section of the settings customized for the device itself, and there's a couple quick settings in the notification area that you can toggle on and off. On the plus side, we get lots of flexibility. We have access to the Play Store to download our own emulators and front ends and Android games. The device comes with an emulation front end by Anbernic, but I hated it. It was really bare bones and not easy to customize, and the games that came on the SD card were all named weird. So almost immediately, I installed my own launcher. You can install Dig or Daigisho, and Anbernic has this set up with a few proprietary emulators for lots of the systems, but I prefer doing most of my emulation through RetroArch. So I set this all up exactly as I like it. It didn't take long, and it's a nearly perfect experience like this for me. However, the downside of Android is that it's not as tight as the LITNXT devices. You have to do lots of stuff yourself, like downloading emulators and front ends and all that. It's not really set up in a super user-friendly way out of the box. Ultimately, it's fine. It works well, and I do prefer Android devices over Linux devices, personally, but expect to need to do a low to medium amount of tinkering to get things into a state that you're happy with. As for the performance of this thing, well, it uses the Unisoc Tiger T618 chip, which is named that because it has the computing power of 618 Tigers. And the performance is right on par with the rest of the T618 devices, like the Retroid Pocket 3 Plus, for instance. All the old stuff is going to run great. All your arcade, Atari, NES, Master System, TurboGrafx-16, Sega Genesis, Super Nintendo, Game Boy Advance, no problems there. And it's powerful enough to use shader presets with those systems, so you can make it look like they're running on an old CRT monitor for that authentic retro vibe. And then it can run all your early 3D systems with no problem as well. PS1, Nintendo 64, Sega Saturn, they'll work amazing on here. No issues. And they feel great on this device with this screen ratio and these controls. Also, Nintendo DS is great. You can set up the hotkeys to swap the screen, and it's touchscreen, of course. 3DS emulation isn't quite there. Only maybe like 40 to 50% of the games will run well, but some of them will. Some of the lower end 3D systems are no problem, like PSP and Dreamcast. Right out of the box, nearly every PSP and Dreamcast game will work great, and maybe 10% of the games will require some settings tweaks to run at 100% speed. However, like all 16:9 aspect ratio games, PSP isn't very enjoyable on this device, maybe because the screen is 4:3, so you'll have letterboxing on the top and bottom of the screen, and when you do that, it's actually pretty small, scaled down on the screen. Get an RP3 Plus or an RG405 if you want to prioritize widescreen gaming. This 405M is for retro gaming, pretty much exclusively because of the 4:3 screen. As for the higher-end 3D systems like GameCube and PS2, they're a bit hit or miss. PS2 is maybe 50% playable. Maybe if you tinker with the settings and get into the weeds, then you can get that up to like 60%. It's really fun to play PS2 games on here, the ones that work. And I have quite a few that I did have fun playing. It's just a shame that it's not powerful enough to handle everything. GameCube is more playable, I'd say, than PS2. Probably like 75% of the games will work fine out of the box. And if you install the MMJR Dolphin build and do some tinkering, you could probably get that much higher. I made a guide of how to get the best GameCube performance on the RP3 Plus. Those same steps can be applied here, so check that out, linked below if you want to know more. I should mention here that this device does get a bit warm in the hands when running high-end games. I don't have hands that get sweaty very easily. I'm a pretty dry guy, generally. But even my hands got a little bit sweaty when it warmed up when I was playing GameCube. And of course, you could play Android games if you're into that sort of thing, and Xbox Game Pass and all that stuff. I don't think that this is ideal for those systems because so many modern games are made for widescreen displays, so they'll be shrunken down on this screen with the letterboxing on the edge. Get an RP3 Plus or an RG405 if you want a better modern gaming experience. I've said it before, and I'll say it again here, why not? There is no perfect retro handheld, because a retro handheld has to be able to play different stuff, and different stuff has different requirements. The original Game Boy was a 10:9 aspect ratio. The PSP was a 16:9 ratio device. There is no theoretical device that's perfect for both the Game Boy and PSP because they're fundamentally different. But lots of retro systems are made for 4:3 displays. Most of them actually. And for those systems, the 405M is pretty darn close to perfect. If we had like a bit more power to run PS2 and GameCube, it would be there, I think. But overall, I've really enjoyed playing these old retro systems on this device. More than my RP3 Plus, specifically because of the screen ratio. This is my new favorite device for playing PS1, Nintendo 64, Dreamcast, and even lots of the older retro stuff, the 16-bit stuff. It has a few shortcomings, the screen isn't amazing, the buttons are a little weird sometimes, but overall I do love it. It's a slick, elegant, premium-feeling device that has a pocket-friendly profile and can handle a lot of 3D emulation. What's not to love about that? And that brings us to the end. Thank you very much, LITNXT, for sending this to me, and I suppose I should tell you to buy this from them. So if you want one, there's a 10% off coupon code and a product link listed in the description below. I would love to know what you think of the RG405m. Share your thoughts in the comments below, and while you're down there, you see this button, the thumbs up button? Yeah, you're gonna want to push that. But more importantly, you're gonna push this subscribe button right there. That's the good stuff, trust me. Oh, that's it from me. I'm TechDweeb. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.